So let's get back to Super Bowl 51. You know, the Falcons have a great coach as well. And they also made adjustments in the locker room. And they were determined to win that game. So much so, in fact, they actually scored first midway through the third quarter and put 7 more points on the board. So now it's 28-3. You move down into the rest of the quarter, and now it's 28-9 entering the fourth quarter. So the Patriots truly had their back against the wall. But Belichick was confident about the changes he had made in the locker room at halftime. And the Patriots ended up shutting down the offense, the Falcons' offense, the rest of the game, put 19 more unanswered points on the board. And in the final quarter of play, with 57 seconds, scored the final points of a 19-point rally. And now the Patriots are moving into overtime for the first time in Super Bowl history. And ultimately, they won the kickoff, or they won the coin toss. They took the kickoff, marched 75 yards down the field, and ended up winning Super Bowl 51 by the score of 34-28. So were the Patriots a different team in the second half than they were the first? They weren't a different team, but they came out with a different approach. And as I said earlier, a much different attitude. But what is it in a halftime moment that is magical for one team and a nightmare for the other? And I know each of you have gone through a SWOT analysis, but one of the things that I've done with all of my companies in the past is taken them into the locker room, if you will, ask them, and we've heard the word focus a couple of times. It is about focus. It is about determination. It is about doing the things necessary to create a different outcome. So going back to halftime for each of us, you know, if we're winning the game, what are we going to do to make sure that we're not overconfident as we go into the second half, or complacent and are playing not to lose? I actually do believe the Falcons, when they were up 28-3, that they took their foot off the gas. And I think they slowed down, thinking that they just had to play not to lose. But the Patriots and many of us who have gone into a halftime and said, okay, I'm losing the game. What am I going to do to change the outcome of that game? How can I become more focused? How can I make the right adjustments? And I see that, especially with this COVID world, that we're going to need to do that to win the game. And so as I look at the rest of 2020 and even going into 2021, I believe that creating a SWOT analysis, actually personally and even for the company, are actually very important. And again, I don't have to teach you guys about the SWOT analysis. You guys have probably done 1,000 of them. But I really do use this for myself and also for the companies that I'm involved with, that will ultimately give us a pretty good picture of where we are, either personally or corporately, what we need to do next, and ultimately coming out of the locker room running instead of crawling or walking, so that we're going to be able to make a difference and actually win the game. So someone alluded to this the other day, but we all remember this moment, do we not? This was a pandemic in my eyes. This was a terrorist pandemic. And the question I asked to companies all over is, were you prepared as a company when we were targeted and when we were hit with that moment? And the answer is, our country wasn't prepared. It did take us off our game. Now, we hunkered down and we survived that, but it was a significant moment in our world. The next pandemic was 2008, and it was an economic pandemic. And the answer was, were we prepared for that? Were we a little complacent? Were we sitting back thinking that we were almost invincible, using my other term? I think we were. And of course, 2008 affected a lot of people. A lot of companies were impacted. A lot of people were impacted. And again, we've all heard this, quote, new phrase, and I don't see it as new, a new normal. Well, we created another new normal. And now we're hit with this 2020, and it is about how we're going to react. It's not being hit with a pandemic, it's how we are going to react. Do we put our head in the sand, or do we go in the locker room, hunker down, and determine what we're going to do differently to change the outcome of that game? And every game does have its ups and downs. And pandemics comes in all sizes, shapes, and colors. And I don't know if you guys remember this game or not, but this is the game I got to play in. And we were down 21-14 at the half. We ultimately came back with just a few minutes, actually a few seconds left in the game, but we brought it back to be at least a good game and made it 35-31. The one thing that I can share here is that I'm one of the few people that wore two jerseys in a season with two different numbers. And the reason for that is we picked up Jackie Smith late in the season because Jay Saldi broke his hand. And so Mike Ditka comes up to me in the locker room one day and says, you know, Robert, numbers are important, and you're number 81 as long as you want to be number 81. And I said, Coach, thank you for that. What are you trying to get at? And after about 5 more minutes of Ditka stammering and stuttering, I said, Mike, what do you need from me? He goes into the fact that we picked up Jackie Smith, and he said, Robert, he wore number 80. I said, Mike, stop right there. As long as I have a locker and a jersey and cleats in the morning, I'm good. I can be 181 for all that matters. So I became number 82, and Jackie ended up, does anybody remember this Super Bowl and what happened to Jackie Smith? He dropped an almost game tying touchdown, and we ended up having to kick a field goal. And if you think about the score of 35-31, that was a pretty impactful moment for Jackie Smith. He did end up becoming getting in the Hall of Fame. He was a Hall of Fame player. But the funny part and the great part for me is I got an email from Jackie Smith, and his salutation at the bottom of his email was, Robert, no, it was Jackie Smith, number 81, because you let me be. That was a pretty touching moment for me because, again, he didn't have to acknowledge that, but he appreciated what I did. He didn't write me a check for the number. I didn't want a check. I just wanted a jersey in the locker room the next day. But Coach Landry also taught me one other business principle. Landry had a CEO mentality. His philosophy was he coached the coaches and he let the coaches coach the players. The media called him aloof, but I will tell you he was not aloof. He had a philosophy of coaching the coaches. And how many of his assistant coaches became head coaches like Dan Reeves and Mike Ditka and Gene Stallings and a few others? But life like sports does have a way of creating winners and losers. And this is one that Mike Ditka used a lot when I was with Mike. But success is never final and failure is never fatal. And this quote actually was attributed to Winston Churchill way back when. It's been attributed to a few other folks, and John Wooden is one of the latest. But I do like the final. I'd actually not seen this until recently, but it is the courage that counts that really makes the difference when we are met with adversity. So, you know, we're going to be coming out of this halftime moment, and business is going to be different. There are going to be hot companies. There are going to be cold companies. There's going to be companies are going to have to make great changes. And one of the things that I am sure of is that there's going to be new products that are going to be born as a result. And as I shared about my last company, when I got through with that gig, and guys, I know each one of you can identify with this. When I got through with that gig, I had never gone a day without a job, ever. I'd never gone a moment without a job. When I got done selling the company and, you know, kind of turning the keys over to someone else, I thought my phone was going to ring off the hook, and it didn't. And I kept thinking about it, and I did take about 6-8 months off because I needed the break, because I was working 20 hours a day for about 2 years. But the key there was I actually made some mistakes, and I'm just being transparent. I made some mistakes. I took that sabbatical thinking that my phone was going to ring off and I'd have a gig the next day. It didn't happen. So I then had to go in the locker room and do some reassessing. And I actually, you know, decided that I didn't want another job. I wanted to be a contract CEO and work with companies and help them, whether it be a turnaround or a halftime moment company or whatever. This is what I wanted to do for the rest of my career. And I'm confident that, you know, I made the right decision. It hasn't been easy, but I did my SWOT analysis, and I'd be happy to share it with you, after we're done. But I am confident that we're going to survive this crisis. I'm confident that we are going to come out of this running again. But as I said earlier, it does take tenacity to weather all the storms of life. And what comes from that is the resilience that is created within us from all those challenges that we have endured to allow us to see that success. So guys, I appreciate you letting me share some thoughts with you. We are in the middle of 2020. It is halftime. And I think that the game is about to start again. And I'm ready for 2021. And I hope you are all as well. Let me know if you'd like to ask any questions or respond to any of my comments.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. You know, this is really a great presentation especially for this situation. And the funny thing is that, you know, we've just passed the midpoint of the year, so we still have 2020 to finish up here. So we really are in halftime in many respects. Got plenty of time, so if anybody's got any questions for Robert, any thoughts, comments, suggestions, that's what we're here for.
Robert, it's a great talk. Really appreciated it and enjoyed learning about you.
Thank you, sir. I mean, we all have stories. I can tell stories for days, you know, whether it be my sports or business or whatever, but we all have stories. And believe it or not, I think great sales, in many cases, are all about stories and how you can relate to people and help people, kind of find themselves in a moment and how to show them how to get out of that moment and get into a better place.
Yeah, I'll speak up as well. I also agree. It was a great talk and it's very timely because a lot of people are, through COVID right now, looking at their organization, what they're going to do, and they're not really certain. Like you said, we've all used SWOT analysis very effectively. What I would suggest, one thing you brought behind that, and probably many of the people on this call, is not just to analyze it, but to know what changes are required and have the leadership and the vision to see where you needed to go and how you make that actually occur.